Hey, dreamers, welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast. I'm Shayla Wey. I am a small business coach, growth strategist, and believer that your dream life starts the moment you lead like you mean it. This podcast is all about leadership, fulfillment, and growth. These are the three pillars that I've genuinely found create not just successful businesses, but meaningful ones. And today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, the evolution of a leader. Because here's the truth. I have learned after coaching hundreds of entrepreneurs, leadership isn't a destination. It's not a title that you earn or a level that you reach. It's a journey, one that evolves with every season of your business, your team, and your life. You don't arrive as a leader. You become one over and over and over again. And today, I want to walk you through what I found about growing through seasons, how to stay grounded when everything shifts around you, and how to keep evolving without burning out, and how this growth connects directly to your dream life. Now, before we dive in, don't forget to join the LFG Business Academy on School for free. Inside, you'll find tools, community, and my mini leadership series, a free video training that helps you grow your leadership, strengthens your systems, and scale sustainably. You can find the link in the show notes, and let's jump in. So I have found that leadership isn't linear. It's seasonal. And leadership has seasons just like you do. And it just like those natural cycles that we go through in nature or that nature goes through from spring to summer, fall, and winter, your leadership goes through phases of planting, growing, harvesting, and resting. In the spring, you're planting, setting vision, casting direction, hiring, and creating. And it's hopeful and it's full of potential. And then in the summer, that's really when you're in the grind and you're nurturing your team. You're refining your systems and staying consistent. And it's busy, it's intense, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And then comes the fall when you harvest the fruits of your labor. You see the results of your effort. Revenue increases, culture strengthens, and progress is visible. And finally, there's winter, a season many leaders resist, but it's vital. And winter is where reflection, restoration, and strategy happen. It's where you pause long enough to learn from the last season, really before rushing into the next. And when I think about all the different seasons as a leader that I've gone through, that I continue to go through, many times when I was in my direct sales business, the spring and the summer were go time. They were time to develop, to recruit, to lead, to impact. Fall was that reset and reflection. And I remember the winter months being time to travel and to reset. And those seasons were so powerful when I was intentional with what was the vision and the assignments that I needed to focus on in all of those seasons. And as I work with leaders in all different types of businesses, but specifically small businesses with teams, it's the same idea as most businesses have seasons as well. And as a leader, it's easy to get caught up in the hustle and the grind. And one of the reasons that fulfillment is a key pillar of mine is I learned through burnout that if we don't take time to pause, and maybe your seasons aren't cut out exactly like I just laid out, but I gotta believe in most businesses, there's a month, maybe it's a few weeks throughout a year where we can kind of take a pause and really reflect and work on us. And the pause, and that's just one of the biggest values I feel like people get from coaching, is allowing ourselves to pause, come up for air, and reflect. And that accountability is so key. And so when we take a look at a 12-month year and we reflect and we look at where the different parts of the business, the seasons, where they look in your business, and we create some really good intentions on maybe it's the quarters the year breaks in, maybe it's every 2 months. I mean, every business that I work with is a little different, but there are those seasons. And when we plan ahead, that gives us some really strong confidence. And then we get to truly just be really present in those seasons. And it allows us to really grow at the next level. And a lot of times we think if we just hustle and we just grind and we just hustle and we grind, like we're going to get more results. And surely I see that burnout, that definition of insanity is of doing that over and over again and getting the same results. So sometimes when we evolve, it does mean letting go of old versions of yourself. And one of the hardest truths that I've had to learn in my own leadership journey is you can't become the next version of yourself while holding on to the old one. And so every new level of leadership asks you to let go of something. It could be old beliefs, it could be old identities, it could even be an old way of doing things. And this is sometimes a theme that I'll see in clients where They'll speak in absolutes. And this is something that my coach shared with me years ago, where I caught myself in these identities or these beliefs or these absolutes. And I've heard clients say things like, well, everybody is blank, or nobody is blank, or it's always like this. And the thing is that when we start to let go and we're really mindful of how we identify, what we do, who we are, sometimes that is the biggest way that we can grow. And sometimes it's letting go of being the one who does everything. There was a time in my business where I felt if I wasn't doing the things, if I wasn't working 6, 7 days a week, I was lazy, people wouldn't respect me. And that wasn't true at all. That was just a belief I had. I had a huge window of time in my business when I was having my kids where I felt that if I wasn't available, if I wasn't around, that I was going to be looked upon as, not caring. And I remember breaking down one time with one of my team members and saying, hey, I just feel really bad leaving early to go get my kids from school. Even though so much of my plan was always to build a business that gave me flexibility, I just had this limiting belief in my brain. And I remember my team member looking at me, or it was one of my assistant managers. And this assistant said, what are you talking about? I think it's admirable that you leave early, that you've created a business. That's why you have me in this role. And it was such a light bulb moment. And sometimes we just have to be aware of how we think of ourselves isn't always necessarily how other people are thinking of ourselves. And when we're intentional, and that's where so much of my coaching is stemmed from, is lessons I've learned of core values of who I am. If my team feels loved and appreciated, they should never feel like they're being taken advantage of. And I remember this being a reoccurring theme in many of my seasons of feeling really bad of if I take a weekend off or if I go away. And at the end of the day, I have to remember I was once there. The reason that I've got to level of success is because I did all those things. And that's why I have staff. That's why I was able to grow the business the way that I have over, a couple decades. And sometimes too, it's even just letting go of needing everyone's approval. I know that for a lot of entrepreneurs. That's why there's not that many entrepreneurs. There's way more employees than there is entrepreneurs, because we feel a sense of security and safety when we are in your typical 9-to-5 job. And nothing is wrong with that. We absolutely need people in certain roles, 100%. But what I find aside from that comes up sometimes with leaders is that we feel, because sometimes we're taking potentially like a different path than maybe what's normal, is we're sort of wired to think that life and business and our schedules almost need to feel a certain way. And that what if someone doesn't approve? Sometimes I've even seen where it's letting go of perfectionism or just being over control. I've definitely got that as well, where I felt like if it wasn't perfect, it wasn't worth doing. Well, this podcast is a great example of just letting go of perfectionism. One of the first things that I told myself when I started this podcast was I'm going to fuck it up and I'm going to figure it out. But in order for me to grow, and I need to get over that next level of caring, and when I mean caring, I don't mean not caring about people or not trying and not doing the best of my abilities. But if we wait till everything is perfect, we will never take action. And when we try to control everything, that's just going to allow us to just feel insane. And so again, we want to be clear with what it is we're going after. And that's why the foundation of so much what I teach is, what is it you really want? And I know when I reflect on my journey, a lot of what I wanted was I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make a difference. How was I going to do that? Well, that has looked different in different chapters of my life. Right now it's coaching. I want to impact people and I want to help them learn from some of the lessons that I have, and I want to empower them and I want to believe in them. And my how is just basically taking action and working with people. And that's my roadmap. And in different seasons when I was in direct sales or different leadership roles, that also looked different. But what I know to be true is that when somebody knows what it is they want and they know why they want it, the how is the roadmap that we create together. And if we just wait until everything is perfect and we're always finding a way, is really when we peel that back, is we just probably have a little bit of fear, a little bit of fear of failure, fear of I'm not good enough, a little bit of imposter syndrome. And so part of that is letting go of perfectionism. And what I have also learned is that one of the hardest things to release isn't the work. It's the identity that we tie to the work. And so when I started to transition from just being a doer to a leader, I had to stop finding my worth in being busy and start finding it in being impactful. And I started to just release that. It wasn't amount of hours I was working, is that I was making an impact and creating results. And so that shift is from doing everything to developing others. And that changed everything about how I lead, how I continue to grow, and really how I live my life by design. And we really get stuck when we don't have that awareness. So if we can't evolve without, or we can't evolve if we don't acknowledge, right? We can't evolve what we don't recognize. And so leadership, that evolution requires a lot of self-awareness. And there's been some hard seasons in my life where I've either been given feedback that I wasn't, expecting, or potentially asking, where I could improve, and thinking that I had some of these areas dialed in, and I really didn't. And sometimes that real honest feedback is exactly what you need to be more self-aware, because sometimes we don't always know what our strengths are, right? Sometimes we don't always see that. And so the best leaders, when they're self-aware, they know what their strengths are. They also know what their weaknesses are, what are their blind spots, and what are some of their triggers. And how they understand their energy really can impact their team and how they lead. And what I have learned is that self-awareness isn't just built in books. We can, and I talk about this all the time, where we can't just read a textbook and have confidence. We can't just read a textbook and feel like we can be a public speaker, right? A lot of the self-awareness that we build is built in feedback. It's built in reflection, and it's built in repetition. And I really just believe that there's such a power in the pause. Even at the end of the day, I'm coaching people to parking lot the end of the day, to bookend, to do an end of the day wrap up, and looking at the day and thinking, well, what went really well today? We can rewire our brain to look for the good, and to also look at, what didn't go well and where do I need to pick up tomorrow? Because I've been in places where my to-do list, and again, if you're a business leader, you're an owner, the to-do list never ends. And once we check something off, there's 3 more things added. But that clarity and that intention really can set us apart and can really create a lot of self-awareness. Because if we get in that space where we're just rushing and we're just doing and we're just working and we're just grinding, we don't really ever take that time to become self-aware, to grow. And that's a huge thing in leadership if we're going to take it to the next level. And every challenge that you face as a leader really is a mirror. So if your team isn't communicating well, how well are you communicating? And this was a lesson that I remember feeling almost really frustrated with, is that first level of leadership is always, it's pointing the finger. It's, they didn't do this and they're not doing that, and I already told them that. And I remember growing in leadership and getting to that place of, my team really is a reflection of me. And so if my team wasn't showing up on time, was I showing up on time? My team wasn't aware of some of the events or upcoming meetings. Did I really communicate that well? And so I almost really kind of became an over communicator. I would send out an email. I would make sure they had that in a Slack. I would send out reminders. It would be added to calendars, which in some ways maybe felt like I was overdoing it. But guess what? The communication was above and beyond, and it was delivered, and it changed that culture. And so it is a big step in leadership to take a look in the mirror and say, this team is a reflection of me, the good, the bad, and, all the things in between. And when we own that and we have that self-awareness, again, it's not a bad thing, but it is a really easy way to pivot and to shift. And so if your business feels chaotic, where are some of those priorities that you're feeling chaotic about? Where are they unclear? Sometimes it's just expectations. Are people showing up a certain way, and how do you communicate that? I'm so big on systems, and I always will talk to my leaders and business owners saying that if I was to come into your business tomorrow, is there a binder? Is there somewhere that has every single standard or procedure, checklist, step-by-step process, so that I could run your business for a day, a week, maybe even a month? And if it's not that simple and it's not that clear, then we got to level up. Because self-awareness is the foundation of sustainable leadership, because you just can't change what you won't confront. So leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about really being able to learn about yourself first, right? We can't lead other people if we're not leading ourselves. And leadership is about people. It's not just a position. I used to think leadership was about being in charge. And I've gone through some spicy phases of leadership in my career. And what I found is that real leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. Okay? Taking care of those in your charge, who you're leading. It's not about titles, it's about trust. It's not about authority, it's about alignment. And most importantly, it's about connection. It's not about control. Nowadays, people quit jobs, get new jobs. So if you really want to have a strong culture, you want to be a leader that people work with for a long time, remember that people don't quit on people. So when we have that trust, we have that alignment, we have that connection, that is the shift. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your people don't feel seen, supported, safe, they just won't perform at their best. And the best leaders that I've seen and tried to emulate are people centered. People don't care how much you know as a leader until they know how much you care. And you really can't grow and scale a business if we don't treat people good. So when we lead with empathy and not lowering our standards, but when we lead with heart and also hold people accountable, there is tough love that can come from a place of love. Sometimes I've had to be a really tough leader. But the thing is, people are always grateful after because it's coming from that balance of a little bit of heart and a little bit of edge. It's that sweet spot of leadership revolution. And as your leadership evolves, so do your systems. Systems and soul must really grow together. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of small businesses make is they really try to scale with the same systems that got them started. And the structure that served you when your business is at 100,000 won't serve you at 1,000,000. And what I've found is that growth and sustainability are twins, and systems are the bridge between those two. So systems are going to give your leadership structure, but they also are going to allow your team to operate with that clarity, which gives them that confidence. When someone knows where they're going, they can feel a lot more confident with that. And the key is that systems without soul are just going to create burnout. And you need both. We need structure to scale, and then we need that soul and that love and that vision to sustain. And that's why my work as a coach will always, always, always tie back to leadership, fulfillment, and growth. Because systems are strategy, but soul is sustainability. And the longer that I lead people, the more that I coach, the more lessons that I continue to reflect on, the more I realize growth without reflection is just motion. We really, really need to reflect. And I'm currently in a 90-day challenge on journaling, and it has been a challenge. I'm pretty consistent with journaling, but just forcing really and being accountable to that is allowing me to reflect way more. And because I'm dialed into this challenge, and it's something that just feels good to do in the morning, is I'm constantly in a space where I'm reflecting. How do I feel right now? What does that mean? What am I grateful for? And it's sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes it's a good reset for me of wow, where I am now is where I used to dream I would be. And it's just sometimes that reflection on what got us here, where do we need to do to get to the next level? And I've learned that pausing to reflect is not wasted time. It is one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself because it's time to refine. It's where that wisdom is built, truly. When I used to think about having blank space in my schedule, I thought that was bananas. I was like, what do you mean? I wouldn't have every hour scheduled. But that's really, like I said, the wisdom is built there. So ask yourself regularly, what season are you in? What's working for you right now? What's not working? When I get on a coaching call with a leader and they're like, yeah, this isn't working and this is frustrating, we just got to dive into that. Well, why isn't it working? And if it's not working, what do we got to do to change it? Sometimes it's the most simple things by just recognizing that can pivot to change absolutely everything. Where am I leading from alignment? And where am I leading from fear? Sometimes just even asking ourselves that questions is what feels good in the business when you're leading? What fires you up? And where do you feel like things just feel like you're coming from a place of fear? And reflection brings clarity, and clarity brings calm. And when you make reflection a habit, you stop reacting and you start leading really intentionally. Your leadership journey, your leadership evolution impacts everyone you lead. You evolve as a leader, everyone's benefiting it. When you focus on that growth, your team, your clients, your family, your community, your growth is a ripple effect. It's going to just create that because your self-awareness creates safety, and your consistency is what's going to create that confidence. Is that doesn't matter how good we are, doesn't matter how all detailed and how perfect we are, is that when we consistently are showing up, we consistently do these things, we consistently are self-aware, that's going to create confidence. Because when you model evolution, when your team sees you leading, adapting, and growing, they feel permission to do the same thing. And that's how you create a culture of growth instead of a culture of fear. Because leadership isn't about just showing up perfectly. It's showing up in a place of being in that mindset of progress over perfection, right? Really progressing. And this would not be an LFG conversation without talking about fulfillment. And I've learned that fulfillment is not the result of evolution. It's that fuel. And I've talked about that before is what is the why? What is that why? And as you grow as a leader, your why will change. And I've seen mine shift time and time again. And that's okay because you're growing. And when you're fulfilled, you lead from overflow, not from obligation. So you create, you communicate, you connect so differently. And fulfillment is what keeps you grounded through that change. And it's what allows you to keep showing up with purpose, even when things feel uncertain. So if you're in a hard season, just remember fulfillment doesn't mean it's easy, it means it's meaningful. And the longer I do this, the more I realize leadership is something you master. And it's something that you master, but you have to maintain. And the way to master it is by knowing that it never ends and that it's a gift. Because as soon as you master one level of leadership, then it's time to get to the next level. So we have to maintain that hunger for that next level of being able to master the new skills, the new challenges, the new lessons, and that's going to bring a new version of you. And every season's going to bring that. And that's what makes it beautiful. Truly, leadership is a mirror of life, and the goal is never perfection, it's evolution. And I love that reframe, looking at ways that we can evolve and not just arrive. So to keep learning, keep adapting, and keep leading yourself first, because when you do, growth becomes natural, fulfillment becomes consistent, and leadership becomes legacy. So if you're listening today and you're wondering, what season am I in? I want you to know every season has purpose. And whether we're building vision, endurance, we're in a place of gratitude, even wisdom, we need all these seasons. And the evolution of a leader isn't about doing it all perfectly. It's really about staying grounded to grow through it. Your business is going to mirror your growth, but more importantly, it's going to mirror your energy. And your results will mirror your leadership. So keep evolving because every new version of you creates a stronger version of your business, your impact, and ultimately your dream life. So if today's episode spoke to you, I'd love to invite you to school to join the LFG Business Academy. It's completely free. And you'll also get connected in that space with other leaders that are evolving through their own seasons, just like you and I. The link for that is in the show notes, so feel free to come join us. And just thanks again for being here today. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, your team, maybe another leader who's growing through their own season. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me on Instagram at Shayla Wey Coaching. I would love to hear what season of leadership you're in right now. And remember, because your dream life starts with the way you lead, the way you live, and the way you grow. I'll see you next time on your Dream Coach podcast.